evening, YouTube. It is pretty late, nearly 8 o'clock. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you about my doll, Margaret. Margaret is a very special doll. I bought her from eBay. Well, actually she was bought for me by somebody who loves me very much. And she was made in the 1880s, and she has a very long but fully documented history. I know her entire life story, who she was bought for and who she was passed to and what dates and everything. And she's come all the way from somewhere in Europe to New Zealand, back to England again, and then she was shipped over to me in Northern Ireland. Now, she's been called Karen for most of her life, after Mrs. Karen Scannell, the lady who owned her originally. And I'm going to show you what she looks like. Now, I had to reconstruct her. She was kind of in pieces. Her eyes had fallen out. But some interesting things have happened around her. I know she's got slightly crossed eyes because I haven't been able to figure out how to put them in properly. Margaret, turn. Let's see. She is an Armand Marseille doll. They were very popular at one stage. They were quite cheap dolls at the time. Everybody had one like this, but because of the fact that they are mainly porcelain and cardboard, they're kind of fragile and they haven't lasted very well. So the fact that she's made it over 100 years or so is pretty impressive. So Margaret has a composite body. She came with a little bit of damage, which is kind of to be expected, and it's totally dry. You can't really see all of the crackles in her finishing. It's hard to show you. But we've had some strange things happen with Margaret. As soon as we bought her, and she came to the house, Raven was completely enthralled, Raven being 3 years old. And of course, when a large doll shows up at the house, you feel, as a 3-year-old, that's a really exciting thing. When I opened the box, of course, she was quite scary looking. She had, her broken features and no eyes, and her joints were all very, very loose. And she was naked. She came with the clothing that was hand knitted for her by the mother of the original owner. But Raven really, really kind of was heart-touched by her and just said, "It's okay, we're going to help you now." And I thought that was a little creepy, but also very endearing, that she just saw this beautiful doll and she says, "It's okay, my mommy can help you be beautiful again." So she was very intensely involved in the restoration of Margaret and fixing her eyes and fixing her wig. And part of what gave her character here is that this hair that she has is not the original doll's hair. The owner, the little girl who was given this doll in the 1880s, at some point had loved this doll to pieces and she needed a new wig. And the wig was actually made for her out of her mother's own hair, so it just gives her so much more life and so much more personality. And just makes her so much more unique. The clothes were hand knitted and all by the same woman whose wig this is, whose hair this is. And I think she's adorable. But I would often hear Raven talking and playing by herself, and she would be in the room with Margaret and would be giggling away to herself or talking to her. And one day Raven fell very ill and she threw up. And the first person she wanted to tell was Margaret, and she came running in. "Oh, I threw up and it was horrible." And she's only 3 years old and she just felt compelled to tell Margaret all about it. Now, Margaret has been placed in the living room where all the action happens. And for some reason, now that she's in a very prominent location, she doesn't seem to be lonely. Raven doesn't feel compelled to go over and nurture her all the time. Every once in a while she'll give her a passing, touch or glance, but that's really it. But what's interesting is she immediately called this doll her friend and really took this immense interest in the restoration of Margaret. And one of the interesting things is, in this house that we're living, Raven seems to have a very keen understanding of the way the house used to be before it was renovated. And once in a while she would say things like, "Who built this part of the house? It wasn't here before." And she would be sitting in the extension of the house, which wasn't an original part of the floor plan. Another thing she said was, "What happened to all my things that used to be in this house?" I'm like, "What things?" So there was my bed, there was a bed, and there was furniture, and the doors were brown, and everything was a lot darker.
I found my picnic thing.
Good, honey. Very nice. And she said that men with ladders came and changed everything. Now, that was 15, 20 years ago, but she really seemed to connect with the idea that this house was different, and she wasn't accustomed to it being this way, and it was just so strange that she had all this information. And I was telling somebody about this one day, and the woman I was telling had grown up in this neighborhood and knew the people who used to live in this house. And I asked her for a kind of confirmation. Did she know what the house looked like before? And I described what Raven had said, and she said, "That's very eerie, because that is all true. The doors were brown, and it was darker." And she said, "If I remember correctly, back here in this room used to be an old stove." And Raven said, "Yes, it was green." And Raven was the 3. She just completely was just thrilled somebody else knew what she was talking about. She just goes, "Yes, it was green, and the room was green," and she was so pleased that somebody else could kind of corroborate her story. And the lady who was speaking to me kind of looked a little alarmed. But in further investigation, that was during the time that a woman named Margaret lived here. So who knows, maybe by calling Margaret Margaret, I've kind of created a connection between what was and what is. I haven't a clue. But I do find Margaret's head looking different ways, and her little offset eyes sometimes seem to be looking straight and dead on, and other times they seem to be looking off in a different direction. And they should be blinky eyes, but I've immobilized them because the blink mechanism isn't working at the moment. So I've just made them where they're very still. They don't go anywhere. So they're not possibly moving because of some kind of a mechanical thing going on in there. They're very fixed. Sometimes they don't appear to be, and sometimes she's in a totally different position. And there's no explanation for it, because I've been the only one, and the last person to look at her, and all of a sudden her head's looking in a different direction. So I don't know what to make of it, but we do love Margaret. And I'm hoping to do some kind of a time-lapse video to just see if I can catch any of that movement on film. I like the idea of haunted dolls, but for the most part I don't believe that there's anything to it. So I will be incredibly amazed if I actually ever were to capture anything on film in that regard. But me and Margaret, we're going to sign off, leave you with that to think about, and I will obviously put up a video at some point just to say when I did this investigation or this time-lapse video what the outcome was, and let you judge for yourself if there was anything interesting on there. If anyone has any suggestions of what maybe I should do or could do to I don't know, to encourage, if there is some kind of an activity around the doll, to encourage it to be active when I can observe it. It's probably a silly request, but if anyone has any ideas about that, then please let me know. Because I really would like to know if there's something to this. It's such a strange string of events and coincidences that I feel there's something to it. It's strange, I know. But I'm incredibly proud of Margaret. I think she's a lovely doll, and I will take care of her for a very long time. Look at the size of her, and she's heavy too, like a baby. Gosh, I look sleepy tonight. And she came with her little original shoes. They're lovely, little leather shoes. Well, that's us. We've got to go. It's late. I look tired, and